Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second nutrition talk. And we're excited to take a bit of a different angle, actually, than we typically do, and really touching on the mindset side of things more than anything. And as you can see from the title, really thinking about the wider impacts of your decisions, not only on your own fitness, your own health, your own productivity, but also as a team, helping out family, friends, anyone who you're connected to. For anyone who was not the first talk, or anyone who's not virtually met me, I'm Deck. I am a professional nutrition coach, and I've included my mission statement here. And for me, this really touches on the same topic, really thinking about the purpose of inspiring others and thinking about the outcome. With nutrition, often it's quite easy to think about the task at hand, such as tracking what you're eating or getting up early to go for a walk or do a workout. To keep it simple and almost as a good motivational tool, it's quite useful to think about it in terms of being healthy, happy, and fitter. And for me, that's my mission and my reason why we're doing what I do. And coming back to this topic of inspiring others and the word why, asking ourselves, what are the reasons behind it, and being as specific as possible. And I've included a few thought exercises. The first one being our social circles and who we hang around with. And there's a really common and famous example from motivational speaker John Ron, who goes into detail about who we are in terms of behaviors and attitudes. And we're actually the average of the 5 people we associate with most. And this is quite a useful and quite a powerful thought experiment, because with this, we can really ask ourselves, how can we improve individually, but also how can we lift up other people, which in itself can help us too. Tying into this quite closely is this sense of purpose, and almost thinking about potentially the selfish way, but the fact that it helps other people also helps you with this whole abundance mindset. And another common quote that I've heard often, which is much more purely motivational, is the whole idea of a candle. And if you share the light from that candle, your own candle, as in your energy and your motivation, is just as strong. And I think for me, that speaks to the fact that sharing doesn't mean that you have to neglect yourself. Most important bullet point on this slide is the oxygen mask. And the reason I've included this is relating this to if you're on an airplane, for instance, and the common ask and recommendation, which is to put your mask on first. And I think when it comes to helping out others and being selfless, it's quite easy actually to forget about your own goals, to forget about your own self-care routines. And one thing to actually think is, by being selfish to a certain extent, you're now able to help out more people because you're not pouring from an empty cup. One thing to think about when you listen to this recording is asking why. Why have you tuned in? Why have you taken the time to learn about nutrition and mindset? And the third point I want to highlight actually, and this is similar to what I recommended in the first talk, and taking action. And one thing to consider is there's quite a large gap actually between having the knowledge of something and then putting it into action. And with this, only pick 1 or 2 things. It's quite easy to listen to a workshop, to tune into a podcast or something similar, and have tons and tons of different things to go away and try. And it can be quite overwhelming. I would recommend doing the opposite. And a bit of a fun game to play along with at home, and something to consider and get your own thoughts on, are idioms. And with idioms, they are quite cliche by nature, and some people will like them, some people will loathe them. What I'm really getting at here is a few simple mechanisms to think about, and they're almost triggers. So if you find yourself a bit demotivated and tired and fed up, these lessons or principles can be quite useful. So point number one, what would you think? I'll give my own answer in just a second. So I agree, Cassie. Absolutely true. And for me, it's interesting. I, up until a couple of years ago, used to think of discomfort as a bad thing. And whether this be something you're scared of, could be public speaking, it could be speaking to somebody who you never met before, if you're in a sales role or something similar. One thing that actually I would recommend is the opposite, almost run into discomfort, and especially from a procrastination point of view. And procrastination could be anything from your own fitness to getting things done around the house. Often the thing you're putting off is the thing that you really need to do most and most urgently. And when it comes to fitness, it's super, super common where people wait until this perfect moment, this perfect life period where everything's a green light. They have the time, energy, fewer responsibilities. The unfortunate truth is that there's never going to be a perfect time. And getting started now is the most important thing. The comfort challenges is a really interesting one and quite exciting and fun potentially. And with this, it could be something specifically you're afraid of, whether that is public speaking again. A couple specific examples which may sound strange at first. One of them is cold showers, and super, super common one. It's a bit of a trend in well-being at the minute. And actually with cold showers, it's more about the principle of doing something that you don't want to do and being disciplined and starting your day in a positive way. And that sense of achievement can be quite effective. Point number two, again, super, super common idiom and one I'm sure you've heard many times. I agree too, absolutely. And you'll hear this throughout the talk. One of my biggest values is keep it simple. And really specifically, actually, to put a number on this, asking yourself at home, what 20% of things can you do that'll give you the most results? And with nutrition, for instance, this could be as simple as drinking more water or doing a 30-minute walk per day. And that's it. And that sounds really, really small and achievable, which is deliberate. And with those results, you may eat less if you're better hydrated, you may focus better at work. The 30-minute walk in the morning is great for movement, really in improving your metabolism specifically. And with this, keeping it to one or two things is equally effective. And last but not least, Mr. Boat.
I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, it's more about if you're too late to start something, such as if you look at somebody who's maybe a bit younger or has more time per se. And with this one, I would disagree with it. Yeah, definitely never, definitely never too late to start. I would say, and I'm including the example actually of Colonel Sanders. Ironically, we're speaking of nutrition, but we think of an achievement and impact and the time that he started. Starting at 65 is often when people retire and slow down, and it's something to think about. And with the diet approach, I've included this to really think of being consistent and treating life like more of an ultra marathon, not just a marathon. And what I'm really getting at here is making sure that you stay consistent. And with most people, they have this stop-start temptation where it's quite easy to, for a couple of months, be really into the fitness and eating well. And as soon as you hit a bit of a bump or a really busy period or stressful time, it's quite easy to put things on pause. And it feels good in the moment and it feels like the correct decision, but then it's really difficult to get started. With the diary instead, you could be at a 7 or 8 out of 10, which is doing a lot and being really, really proactive and on top of things. And it's okay actually to tune this down a bit and tune it down even to 1 or 2, where you're doing a couple of things just to keep up some form of momentum. And a bit of competition. So if you're listening at home and we're enjoying and learning a lot, and you're open to sharing, could be in a chance of winning a consultation and great opportunity to have a bit more of a deep dive into anything you're struggling with and set some effective goals. Sick. And a quick overview for today, put into 3 main sections: bit of accountability, not just for others, but also holding yourself accountable, doing a deeper dive into consistency, and then also finishing with goal setting, and then also with that, how to think about progress and any failures that inevitably happen along the way. And something to ask yourself too, if you are listening at home, why have you tuned in? What do you want to get out of this, and what do you really want to improve and focus on?
Do I need to tell you?
Well, if you want, yeah, of course.
I mean, obviously, being the Wellbeing Network champion, I always find, I'm always looking for ways to inspire others for healthier living and healthier choices. But also at home, I find that even if, let's say, I'm doing the good work, there's someone at home who is not necessarily on the same page. So it's sometimes hard to convince them that maybe going different direction would be actually beneficial for all of us, not only for one person. So it's just trying to find the ways of just not getting into someone else's habits as well. When you're living with other person and they have different nutritional needs than you, if that makes sense. So it's just finding that how to balance the social eating against your own ideas on how you should be eating. Does it make sense?
Absolutely. No, it's such a great point, and it's incredibly common, and I think that most, if not everyone, would be in the same boat. And yeah, it's tricky actually. And I find that being careful about how to go about inspiring others is really important. I'll touch on it a bit in the first section, and I think a lot of it comes from language as well. And so I think it's really interesting, because I think that for most people, they almost know intrinsically what they probably should do, and
but also you never know what that other person might need or what their dietary requirements are. So even if you're giving an advice, you might not actually be giving the right advice for that particular person. So you have to be really careful how you approach it. And I find it quite difficult to inspire them to at least, see what's good for them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Probably one of the hardest things, and we'll touch on it now, and hopefully one of these principles will be useful. And absolutely. And one of the things that I found quite effective is the teaching side of it. And the reason I'm including this is touching on the protege effect, which I think is fascinating. And the long and short is, whenever you teach somebody something, and with this it could be nutrition and why it's good to drink water, or why certain foods are better for you, it helps you to retain it better. And I think part of this is almost touching on that inspiration side of it, where you almost by default have to put it into different words or explore different ways of helping someone else learn. And with that, it gives you a much greater sense of competence and a bit of autonomy with the information. One thing which could be an interesting way to think of it is similar to work. And with this, what I'm really touching on is having a bit of a system in place. Celebrating the wins, I think, would be absolutely one of the main things. And I think that positive reinforcement, at least from my own experience, both helping others and people encouraging me, I think it's often quite good. I think that sometimes it's quite easy to focus on what people shouldn't do. And it's that kind of pressure, that sense of don't eat this, don't do that. And I think that for some people, it's almost a sense of they're losing something, which can be more negative. And that's something I found that's quite useful. And with the wins, make them really small. I think that's also really effective. And the really small win could be if they've tried one new vegetable per day or per week, or something really tiny, and that hopefully should build some nice momentum. We created this as well, and I thought it was quite an interesting topic. And there's a great TED talk I heard recently. I need to find the speaker again, get a note of that. But what they were really touching on was that sense of trust with being more vulnerable and admitting your own mistakes, and time very closely into that is giving people this sense of A, don't try and be perfect, but also B, if you're eating healthy and being active and really on top of things, if you're the sort of person who still makes mistakes, they can be the same person who is active and healthy and on that much more positive path. And I think that with that, it's more encouraging, because I think especially with social media and the digital age, which has probably been perpetuated during lockdown, people, I myself included, I think almost all of us, compare to others, and it's so easy to get into and think so and so is getting up at 6 every day, doing a HIIT workout and having smoothies for breakfast, and they're perfect. I've woken up at 8 and not done anything. So I think that can be really quite effective and encourage people to be more open and more genuine. So I think this sense of having just to highlight reels online can be quite detrimental as well. But it's an interesting one, and careful about not encouraging too much in the way of betting. But what I'm guessing at here is almost being a bit sneaky actually with what nudges you have. And this is something that you can use almost like a bit of an extra push and to give a bit more urgency. And it touches on the sink cost fallacy, where if you've committed to X amount of money that if you don't do something, you'll lose, it almost gives us this just extra boost and extra kick almost in the correct direction. And then hopefully once you get some more momentum, you can then really start to build up more complex and more healthier habits. And yeah, I would encourage, don't make it too much, of course, but it's just a small tool in the toolkit that can be effective. And coming back to the group side of things and accountability, two main areas I'd look at would be as a partner, in twos, and in groups. And with this, it goes two ways. For instance, if you commit to doing an online workout where you have to meet somebody at 6 p.m., you're much more likely to stick to that deadline. Because if you don't do it, you're not only letting yourself down, you're letting down somebody else. And again, it's just an extra trick that really helps when you feel a bit tired and fed up and have lots of reasons not to do something. And then from a wider perspective, the group accountability can be incredibly effective too. And one area I would look at actually is challenges. And challenges, again, just almost uses our own psychology to our advantage. And I think the tough thing is most people, we do know what we need to do and being healthy is good, but sometimes we just need to be a bit sneaky with getting started, really. And if it's a challenge with fundraising, marathon training is a very common one. Making best use of these can be quite effective. And wrapping up section one very quickly, the main thing I'd look at from here as well is group accountability. And with that, it's just that extra boost because as humans, we are, it's quite hard to be self-motivated at times. And it's almost that extra spark to get started. And tying into this whole idea of getting started, being consistent, and consistency is, at least from what I've heard, and I'm sure you're the same, Kasia, for people so difficult. And it's one of the things that people mention most as the problems with nutrition. And with this, I've got a few tricks and actionable tips included. And you'll notice with lots of these, they're quite easy, and that's definitely deliberate. And with this, non-negotiables, these are really, really useful for giving you a bit of structure, but also as a reward mechanism. And if you think of a to-do list, almost similar to at work, and once you tick something off, you do get that sense of achievement and I've done something positive, and that whole sense of moving forward. With this, make them realistic and make them relevant to you. So what if everyone's going to have different non-negotiables? If I gave a few of my examples, it would be every day I'll try and do 10,000 steps, just so I'm moving around and keeping active. And I'll try and do 4 workouts per week. Anything else is a nice bonus. And going back to the why side of things, I mean, this catch is quite effective for inspiring others too. And you can really tie it into consistency, especially at those times where you are tired and fed up and a bit reluctant. The why game is repeating the word why as if you're asking the question. So you can start with a statement that says, I want to get fitter. And then you can say, why do I want to get fitter? Because I want to have more energy during the day. Why is that important? And then X, Y, Z. And by the time you've asked it 4 or 5 times, you really often get to quite a powerful reason. And probably my favorite slide from the whole talk actually is keep it simple. And if you take away anything from today, actually, it is don't forget to factor in life stress, because we can't control that. Obviously, COVID is a bit of a once in a lifetime thing, but this is included in the sense of we're in lockdown, we have work, we're on Zoom most of the time, ironically, and all these different factors, responsibilities, to-dos, looking after other people, deadlines. These are all really important. And having the knowledge of nutrition is one thing, but being able to then apply it into your own life and your own schedule, that's really important. And this is why keeping it simple is so effective. And thinking of this, and I thought it'd be useful to touch on action and this whole sense of, okay, so I've got this simple task to do, it's then doing it. Always the hardest part. And one of the principles I learned from Mark Manson, he's a brilliant author, and it comes down to not relying on motivation or inspiration, because they're quite hard to control. Some days maybe feeling great and really fired up and really ready to go. The other day, literally 24 hours later, you might be completely fed up and quite low in energy and not really feeling up to it. What he says to keep it as simple as possible is start with action. And with the action side of things, you can tie this into keeping it simple, in the sense of, if your action for the day is a 30-minute walk, you know that you can achieve it. You know that you will always have the time for it. And as soon as you start doing it, you're then motivated and you want to do more. And it really adds into this flywheel idea where you know your starting point, and then the more you do action, the better you feel, the more action you can do, and that's a really positive way to build momentum. This is another fun principle, and anyone who has headspace or practices meditation may be familiar, is building up a streak. And with this, you can use an app potentially, or write it on your calendar, or note it down if you're journaling in the morning. And this is another tool, actually, another incentive that you can use. So, such as if you have done your 30-minute walk for a couple of weeks, you writing in number 14 in itself can be quite motivating, because your goal is now to never break that chain. So you get to 15, 16, 17. Before you know it, you'll be over 100. And that's, again, another, it's not a hack almost to focus on. This is one thing that is maybe a less comfortable topic, but something to bear in mind, just to be mindful of. As you improve, some other people that you know may not be comfortable with it, and they may criticize and hold you back, and it's almost that sense of dragging you back down to their level. One thing which may sound counterintuitive is, if it does happen, it may be a good sign, because you're growing, you are improving. And with this, I think that focusing on the strategies to inspire others can be useful here. And it's something to just watch out for. So it can be quite sneaky. And a few of the phrases at the top on that bullet point, they sound reasonable, such as being really sociable and, hey, it's just one drink or just one bite. Just being mindful of it can really help to protect you against it. And wrapping up this section again, if you take away one thing, it would absolutely be making every habit and task so easy, almost laughable. And that in itself should be a useful way to lower the barrier. And then you get started, and then you keep going. And thinking of this, we've got the inspiring others and inspiring yourself, staying consistent, keeping up with your routines. One thing to tie it all together is goal setting, and then also how we think about progress. First one, touched on smart goal setting again. What I have included is Parkinson's law. And this, I think, is a fascinating and useful tool, which is however long you give a certain task, that is how long it will take to do it. Such as if you are working one day and you normally finish at 5, it will take you until 5 to do your tasks, which is great. If you have a dentist appointment at 12 and you need to be done at 12, most, if not all of us, will find a way. And this can be super useful, because with nutrition, it's often open-ended. You often think, one day I'll do a marathon, or one day I'll lose this weight or improve my appearance, XYZ. Stick a date on it and actually make it quite strict, make it quite difficult, because even if you don't reach it, you'll often find that you'll surpass what you thought was possible. And with SMART goals, the other rules apply: specific, measurable, attainable, and relevant, of course, time bound. And tying this into simplicity, stepping stones are a great tool. And for instance, if you have a big, long, scary goal in the distance, that's often a good thing, because you know that you will have to grow and improve and really stretch to reach it. However, obviously in itself, it can be scary and overwhelming. But if you focus on daily, weekly, monthly, and almost make it automatic, almost think of it as similar to work, where you have a to-do list and you just tick it off. And by the time you get to weekly, you build up a really great bit of momentum. And then weekly takes you into monthly, and almost like dominoes, by the time you build up a few months, maybe even years actually, you really have made some solid progress. And with this, probably one of my favorite principles I've learned from the past year from author James Clear. Brilliant author, and he speaks a lot about habits and really building up a solid foundation. And I think this is a really great way of illustrating how these small changes add up. So it's not just about starting and staying consistent, it's actually does have some science behind it. And if you look at one thing today, is if you try and be 1% better today, that's really small. That is 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day. By the time we get to the end of the year, exponential. And really similar, this is one of the best illustrations and ways of putting progress that James also uses. And if you think about ice cubes, ice will only melt at 0 degrees. If we come back to the chemistry of it, if you think about starting at minus 10 degrees, by the time you get up to -2 or -1, nothing has happened. And this is really common where people think, I'm walking, I'm eating well, I'm drinking well, I'm sleeping. It doesn't seem like I've done much. I don't feel like I've made much progress. And then suddenly overnight, as soon as you reach 0, it's a huge breakthrough. You'll look in the mirror and then you say, wow, made a huge improvement, or your running time will double with the pace you can do. And this is a really useful way of thinking of it. And it's same as overnight success. So if there's any huge artists or celebrities or actors, it seems like they've made this almost sudden overnight chance that's happened. But with that, it's almost come from these 2, 5, even 10 or more years of training, improving. That all adds up, and it's something worth considering. And a quick mention of failure, everyone's favorite topic. The reason I've included this is it's very relevant to nutrition. And if we think about going out to a party and drinking too much or overeating or having a great week and then having a terrible couple of days, they can actually be a really good thing, because with this you can, provided you ask yourself good questions, you can say, okay, so on today or at this party I overate, what happened before, how is my moods, what can I do differently? And actually they're really great stepping stones to then be successful later on. And I've included Thomas Edison because the amount of times, the amount of experiments, the amount of failures was astronomical, but he still achieved the goal. And he would not have achieved it had he not tried and tweaked and made changes. And to wrap up the final section, you think about one thing from here, it is that 1% better a day. And this is something you can do now. This is something you can start, and even 5 minutes, it absolutely adds up. Something to ask yourself at home as you're going away and telling everyone else, what's your favorite takeaway? What for you really resonated, and what for you will you take into your daily routines?
That last one really was good. 1% a day makes a 37 times difference in a year.
That's really it. Fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing. And I think when you visualize it, it really drives it home. I remember for me that, yeah, it's funny because a lot of phrases and similar principles I hear a lot, and they are good, but it's not until sometimes you see it and you think, wow, it really does make a huge difference.
And also make it simple for me. It's always the good one, good advice. Be mindful of the language around food.
That's it. No, it's a great point. So delighted to focus on those, and a few other take-home messages as well to finish. And yeah, hope it was all useful. And for anyone listening at home as well, any extra questions, even after you listen to this, always eager to help out. And this way you can find me, or the usual channels, McLaughlin Nutrition.